So this happened about 2 years ago when me and my girlfriend Zara were living in this apartment complex in Phoenix. I'm telling you this story because it still gives me the creeps thinking about it. We thought we found this perfect little place on the 3rd floor. The rent was cheap, which should have been our first red flag, but we were broke college students, so we didn't care. The landlord was this guy named Mr. Patterson. He was probably in his 50s, always wore these wrinkled button-up shirts and had this weird habit of jingling his keys while he talked. He seemed okay at first, maybe a little too friendly, but nothing that made us think he was dangerous or anything. Everything was normal for the first few weeks. We unpacked our stuff, got settled in. Zara hung these blue curtains in the living room that her mom gave us. I remember they were kind of ugly, but they blocked out the streetlight pretty well. Then one morning, I woke up and the whole apartment smelled like cigarette smoke. Not just any cigarette smoke, though. It was this really cheap, harsh smell that made your nose burn. Neither me or Zara smoked. Nobody in our building smoked either, at least not that we knew of. I asked Zara if she noticed it, and she said yeah, it was strongest near the curtains. We figured maybe it came through the vents or something. Old buildings do weird stuff sometimes. But it kept happening. Every few days we'd wake up and the place would reek of smoke. It would be gone by afternoon, but it was definitely there in the mornings. Around the same time, small things started going missing. Zara had this silver bracelet she always left on the bathroom sink. One day it just wasn't there. She looked everywhere for it. Then a few days later, I noticed some cash missing from this jar I kept on my dresser. Just like $5 or $10, but I was pretty sure it was more than I thought. We didn't think much of it at first. You know how it is when you live with someone. You assume you just misplaced stuff or forgot where you put things. Zara thought maybe she left the bracelet at work or something. But then our neighbor Mrs. Chen mentioned something weird. She lived across the hall and was always up early walking her little dog. She said she'd seen Mr. Patterson in the courtyard a few times lately, carrying tools and stuff. When I asked her what time, she just shrugged and said it was usually really early, like before sunrise. She didn't seem to think it was strange, though. That's when I started getting paranoid. I went to the hardware store and bought one of those cheap window alarms. You know, the kind that goes off if someone opens the window. I put it on our bedroom window just to be safe. 2 nights later, the damn thing went off at like 2:30 in the morning. Scared the shit out of both of us. I jumped up and checked the window, but it was still locked. The alarm was beeping like crazy. I turned it off and we looked around the apartment, but everything seemed normal. Nobody had come in through the front door. Then it happened again about 30 minutes later. Same thing. Window alarm shrieking, but the window was locked tight. This time I was really freaked out. I stayed awake the rest of the night just listening for sounds. The next day I decided to do some investigating. I started looking around the apartment more carefully, checking corners and places we never really paid attention to. Under the kitchen sink, behind some cleaning supplies, I found this thin coil of copper wire. It looked like electrical wire, but it was really thin, almost like fishing line. I had no idea what it was doing there. Then I noticed something else. Above our bedroom closet, near the ceiling, there was this tiny hole. It was barely visible unless you really looked for it. It looked like someone had pushed something thin through the drywall from the other side. I got this idea to check our front door lock. I grabbed this little makeup mirror that Zara had and used it to look at the lock from different angles. The keyhole looked weird. The metal around it was kind of worn down and filed smooth. It definitely hadn't looked like that when we moved in. That weekend, I was taking out the trash and I saw something in the shared dumpster that made my stomach drop. There was this plastic bag with a pack of those cheap cigars inside, the kind that smell really harsh when you smoke them. There was a bakery sticker on the pack, from this place called Tony's Bakery on Central Avenue. I knew that place because Mr. Patterson was always leaving notes there for tenants about building stuff. I took a picture of it with my phone but didn't touch the bag. Looking back, maybe I should have taken it to show someone, but I was too scared to mess with it. By now, me and Zara were both really paranoid. We started talking in whispers when we were in the apartment, like we thought someone might be listening. We kept all the lights on at night and barely slept. Then came the night that really confirmed everything. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because Zara had this big exam the next day. We went to bed around midnight, but kept all the lights on. At exactly 3 a.m., the window alarm went off again. But this time, we heard something else. The soft click of our front door lock turning. I grabbed a baseball bat and threw open the front door as fast as I could. The hallway was lit up by the emergency lighting, but nobody was there. The hallway was completely empty. But right there on our welcome mat was a single cigarette butt. When I picked it up and smelled it, it was the exact same harsh smell that had been on our curtains. The next morning, I marched down to the building office and demanded to see the maintenance logs. The woman who worked there, Sandra, was really nice and let me look through them. There it was, clear as day. A maintenance request entry logged at 2:45 a.m. that night. It just said routine check and was signed with Mr. Patterson's initials. Sandra said nobody else ever signed those logs, especially not at that hour. I showed her the entry and told her what had been happening. She looked really uncomfortable and said she'd talk to the building manager. That afternoon, we got a call saying we could change our locks if we wanted to, and they'd reimburse us for it. When Mr. Patterson came by the next day to check on things, he was acting really nervous. He kept jingling those keys and wouldn't make eye contact. He said something about how he'd heard we were having security concerns and that he just wanted to make sure we were safe. The way he said it made my skin crawl. We changed the locks that weekend and filed a complaint with the housing authority. Mr. Patterson tried to smooth things over by paying for the new locks himself and even gave us a $50 credit on our rent, but we were already looking for a new place. When we moved out 2 months later, we were packing up Zara's makeup mirror when we found something underneath it. There was this strip of film, the kind you get developed at those 1-hour photo places. It had a developing stamp from a CVS on Indian School Road. The photos were of our hallway, taken at night. You could see our door and the numbers on it clear as day. There were like 6 or 7 pictures, all taken from the same angle, like someone was standing at the end of the hall watching our apartment. We never found out exactly how Mr. Patterson was getting in, or how long he'd been doing it to us, and probably other tenants. The copper wire, the filed lock, the hole in the wall. We think he had some kind of system set up to monitor us or unlock the door remotely. Maybe he was using the wire to trigger something or bypass the lock mechanism. The photos proved he'd been watching us for who knows how long, taking pictures of our comings and goings like some kind of stalker. We reported everything to the police, but they said without catching him in the act, there wasn't much they could do. They took our statement and said they'd keep an eye on the building, but we could tell they weren't taking it too seriously. The detective we talked to said stuff like this was more common than people think, especially with older landlords who think they can do whatever they want. He suggested we get a restraining order if Mr. Patterson contacted us again. About 6 months later, we heard through Mrs. Chen that 2 other tenants in our old building had complained about similar things happening to them. Missing items, weird smells, feeling like someone had been in their apartments. The building management company ended up firing Mr. Patterson and installing new security cameras in all the hallways. Mrs. Chen said some new tenants found weird holes in their walls too, and maintenance had to patch up a bunch of them. Sometimes I wonder how many other tenants he did this to over the years. How many people just thought they were losing things or imagining the cigarette smell? How many young women living alone might have been his targets before us? We were lucky we figured it out before something worse happened. I still have nightmares sometimes about waking up and finding him just standing in our bedroom, watching us sleep. We live in Tempe now, in a much nicer place with better security, but I still check our locks twice before bed every night. And whenever I smell cheap cigarette smoke, it brings me right back to that apartment and those sleepless nights when we knew someone was watching us.